And we are back with Becky Freemal in the house, best-selling author of the book Brand Voice. Come on now, Becky, welcome to the show.
Can we just talk about the bestseller part? How unbelievably cool is that? I'm so excited. Like we did the thing, Jake. We did it.
You did it. You did
Well,
the
you
thing.
guys were a big part of it. You helped a lot.
We appreciate that. And you know, we're going to talk about the entire experience and kind of how you got there. And then we're also going to talk about where you want to take this thing. All right,
Yeah.
because you're coming fresh off of a launch, you know, and this is something that is so exciting because it's still so fresh. Your book's still the number one new release in several categories. Like it's amazing. So here's where I want to begin. Okay. The book is called Brand Voice. Why in the world did you start to write a book? And how did you decide that you wanted to talk about brand voice?
Okay. So high level, the book, I have so many stories in my brain. I have a feeling this is not going to be our last foray, but it was just something when you specifically talk about brand voice that I really became to realize as I left the journalism world, because I was a broadcast journalist for 24, 25 years. And I realized when I moved more into corporate spaces that a lot of people were data, 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 data all the time. And so I thought, and almost like a little kind of storytelling, that's such a soft skill and it might be necessary. To me, realizing no, it's actually a necessary skill. And while the data is super important, it's right there with it. And so you need that data. And then you find the stories that wrap around that data to inform your brand voice and then continue to use the data to track the stories that launch from it. But I really see a big gap in the business world and even in the nonprofit world when it comes to driving growth, whether it's revenue, whether it's donations, you name it, that story piece still seems to be left out.
Talk to me about that story piece. All right, we were talking beforehand why storytelling is, you know, so important. And I'm a big believer in storytelling and how it can play a role into shaping decisions, shaping people, shaping messaging, shaping opportunity. So talk to me about why you feel storytelling is such a integral part of building brands and getting results.
One much, well, I shouldn't say much smarter, but probably much smarter. I don't like self-degradation, but a very smart person came up with the hierarchy of effects, HOE, in marketing. And I remember sitting in my MBA class one day and going through that whole model. And in a nutshell, it is basically that people think, then they feel, excuse me, they think, they feel, and then they do. And that think, that middle, I mean, I'm sorry, that feel, that in the middle part between thinking and doing, that's where the stories are. And that's what drives that action. And so when you're talking about, hey, I need the bottom line, I need to get to my board and give them the data points and the trend lines and all that good stuff. Yes, you absolutely do. But do you know who drives those trend lines? People. And the people aren't going to make the decision to act and to do the thing you want them to do unless you connect with them on an emotional level, because that feeling is what happens right before action.
Mm. And when people are talking about storytelling, let's just dig into this aspect a little bit deeper here, okay? When we talk about storytelling, what do you believe are critical components that make a great story? And how can people go about telling stories when they don't think they're great storytellers?
That is, I love that you asked that because that just triggered a memory I had when I walked into a job many moons ago and I had a team member who was going to report into my position. And I almost feel like maybe she was trying to like level the playing field right away. Maybe, I don't know. And she said, just so you know, I'm not a good writer. And I was like, well, what makes you think that? And she's like, well, my past bosses told me that basically. That was the review I got year after year. I needed to up my skills. And I said, well, jury's still out, so let's not worry about that. And if there's some writing needs, let's work on it. And so next question was, well, what's your brand voice? Well, we don't have one. So bingo, bango, there you go. I mean, that might be the issue right there. How do you write stories and how do you share a narrative? You don't even know what voice it's coming from if you don't know
Mm.
who or what you are. So that brand voice is so imperative from the very, very beginning, because your brand voice is not really the words you say. I mean, it can be, but it informs the words you say. It informs those campaign slogans. And it gives you that cohesive messaging at every single touch point, whether you're talking to audience members, whether you're in a corporate meeting or in the boardroom. If you put it out there for a job posting and then the person comes in, you want that onboarding experience to be smooth and seamless.
Right.
So when they are there, they're like, oh, that's what the job posting said. And look, it's really happening.
Yep. 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 Okay. I want to go a little bit into this because you said something that triggered a thought that I had, which is storytelling. This can be a outward external type of thing where your brand is telling a story, right? You just shared a story, you shared a memory, you shared an experience. I consider that like an external storytelling that's going to create that feeling, right? That emotional side of things. But what about the stories we tell ourselves, right? As the founder, as the CMO, as the person who's designed to help build the brand voice. How do these two different types of stories, and I know that they're very different, but how do these two types of stories play a role into developing that external brand voice that people want to be received as or perceived as?
And I almost would say they're not very different, or really in a way they shouldn't be different, because if you have this narrative in your head as a founder, and this would just be for someone who say just is new in a business, founded it in the first year to 5, even 10 years, maybe, and not a mature industry, but why you founded your company, the purpose of it. And that is a beautiful way to start on your brand voice, because if you had a purpose in your heart, you have a solution. The people out there in the world have a problem that they're looking for that solution. Your brand voice is what's going to connect and make that bridge. So you want to be extremely genuine about your brand voice and be very honest and authentic. And I always say genuine because people don't like a disingenuine person, and they don't like a disingenuine brand or company. And so it's no
Yeah.
different. And so genuine is a huge, huge part of it. And I tell people, if you're in an industry like, let's say, banking or financial institutions, they're not 5 years old. They've been around for a long time. So you might be the CEO, but you may not be the founder, but you still have a purpose. You have that job for a reason. You know where you want to go. You know where you want to get the team moving so that you can help those customers. And when you talk to financial institutions, some are really good at consumer loans. Some might be really hardcore in mortgage, some, et cetera, go down the line. But when you know what your purpose is and the people you serve, it's so much easier to find them because you can speak their language and meet them where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So good. When you were writing this book, okay, you had the idea, you've clearly got a background, you've got the education, you've got the knowledge that makes you such a great author for this book, Brand Voice. What was your experience like? Was there differences from how you expected the book process to be compared to what you maybe thought it was or maybe what it was? Talk to me a little bit about your experience of creating this book.
The only difference I would say is it was, and I don't want to use the word easy, but it was easier than I thought. And I think it's maybe because I do come from a background of writing and journalism and storytelling already. But Jake, it was when I was writing, those were some of the moments over the last several months that I felt so centered and so focused, and I was zoned in, like I was doing my thing, and I just felt so good. And, you know, I think when people are like, well, how long did it take you to write? I said, that's a hard question to answer, because I've been out in the working world for cough, cough, 25, 30 years. I started when I was 5. I'm Doogie House. But I've been out there for a while. So I have been writing this book and learning it through lived experiences for decades. And
Yeah.
so to finally be able to sit down and, so to speak, pen to paper, fingers to keyboard, and just get it out of my head was wonderful. And then this is where your team really helps. And Big Idea to Bestseller helped keep me on the path, which is I am not, I've never done it before. So I didn't know how to organize it. I didn't know how to put the structure in place. And so Adrian, my writing coach, we came up with some chapters, and then I went and brain dumped and then organized it into the buckets. And then I had some like, oh, this just isn't working. So then when we met, she's like, well, let's rearrange this. Like, this chapter might actually need to be 2 chapters. Let's try that. And it was just having someone to help me get outside of my own brain. And it was like the floodgates opened after that one little hiccup of my brain, like hitting that wall, that roadblock. And I also, I was a journalist, so writing fast and getting things done quickly is kind of my jam. 100% is my jam. So when Adrian would say things like, she just knew how to motivate me. She's like, all right, let's get X amount written by the next time we meet. And I was like, challenge accepted.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I think that that's one of the things that we've really had fun creating for our clients is like, how do we challenge in a way that makes it feel like a game more than
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, you have to get this done by this time. And a lot of that is when we were creating Big Idea Bestseller from the get-go, from the very first time. It's like, I love challenges. myself, and I know that I'm motivated by like achievement in certain areas. And so
Mhm.
when you can make the book writing process not write your whole book, figure it out. And you could say, hey, write this many words, write these 3 chapters, write this, and then you get it done faster than you ever thought possible. it
Yes.
it becomes so much more of this of a doable process, and like you said, not easy but easier than you initially think. And so as you were going through everything and you were going through the whole process, was there a favorite part of the experience that maybe you thought wouldn't be that fun for you, or maybe that you were really looking forward to and it just exceeded those expectations? Was there any part that you really enjoyed in the process?
Yeah, writing. I mean, really, I'm 110% a people person, but I do love writing, and I think that that balances me and my brain and life, having those quieter moments. But I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed it. And I know that, we're not all going to be J.K. Rowling, so it's not like I'm going to be rolling in the dough from book sales or something. I mean, maybe if I put it out there in the ether, maybe. But there was a part of me that's like, God, I would love to do this. Like, this would be a great job to have. You know what I mean? But I digress because I love what I do. I'm telling the stories for businesses, and they're different, all the time. And I love digging into new clients and companies and saying, let's look at your data. And when those stories come to life and they ding, kind of go off in my head, I'm like, this is it. And I love that part of it. And so having, as a fractional CMO, I get to do that for a bunch of different people.
Yeah, yeah. And knowing, one of the things that, well, I'm going to ask the question and then I'll get into a thought that I have for you.
Okay.
Now that the book's out, and we'll talk about the whole launch experience and everything, but now that the book's out, what are you hoping to use the book for, and how do you plan on using it now that the book's out, hit bestseller status, people are buying it from all over, giving you reviews? Like, where do you see this going?
Yeah, shout out to Australia. Had a sale out there. I loved it. And one in England. I was like, let's do this, people. But I mean, it works anywhere. I mean, stories are stories. People are people, no matter where you go. And that connection is key. So what I hope, honestly, for this book is kind of a 2-part answer. I want to use it for me as lead generation, to let people know, subject matter expert, to set myself apart. Like, hey, this is what I can bring to the table as your
Yep.
fractional, executive and your marketing strategist. But as I've been doing that, I've realized there are people, kind of our shtick for fractional is like, hey, you don't have the top heaviness of a full-time C-suite, but you still need the strategy and the marketing, and we can come in and help, and it's less expensive. It is. But then you still have people who it's still too much for, like a full-time fractional. It's kind of an oxymoron, but having someone come on as a fractional CMO might still be too heavy for some people. And so by writing this book, I was really able to help, honestly, some of my fellow solopreneurs who are just getting up and started, and they can't afford my services. And heck, I probably couldn't afford their services. You know what I mean? Because we're all just kind of getting our businesses up and running as entrepreneurs. And there's that growth stage. And when I talk to people who are further down the path, I have heard a lot of them say, I wish I would have known when I started my business how important marketing was, and that I should have done it from the beginning. I think a lot of people don't understand the importance of it, or B, they understand, but again, they just can't afford it. So this book will really, I truly believe it's going to help drive growth for people, and they're going to open it, and the right people with this information in hand are going to work magic. I really think so.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And that's why you wrote this book, right?
Yes.
Like this book is supposed to give people not just hope, but
Yes.
it's supposed to educate them on what they can actually do to see results, right?
Yeah.
Your tagline, people plus data drive results,
Right.
right? And so if people are able to read this, they're going to be able to drive their own results. And if they get to results to a certain level, or they're already at a certain level, then they will be able to come to you and say, hey, I
Right.
read your book. We're ready to hire you for this. Or, hey, we read your book. We need you to speak to all of these people because they all need to hear your framework and your thought. And so one of the ideas that I have for you, just as I'm thinking about this, and also learning how much more you love writing than I thought you did. Like, I knew you had enjoyed that, but like now hearing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, what a great idea that you can incorporate. And maybe you're already doing this. But what we see work really well with people who want to leverage the book is siphon the book into large, medium, and small bite-sized chunks. so
Okay.
that you can redistribute everything. Because your book, you just spent all this time creating and writing the greatest book you possibly can. And so now, as you look to your social media, how can you pull out the small, medium, and large chunks that can be directly related to what your audience needs? How
Yes.
can you, since you love writing, how can you take a page in your book and turn that into an email campaign for the next week? And so your book will likely serve for all of the content you're ever going to need
Right.
for the foreseeable future, which if you do that, people will start to understand your brand voice, literally
Yeah.
your brand voice, and they'll be able to see, okay, I believe her. I see her building this in real time. This is so amazing. So if you're not already doing that, I highly encourage you to start leveraging the book for large, medium, and small types of content related
Yes.
to everything.
I've done it for social media, but I haven't done it for my email campaign. So I do need to get into that. And I mean, as a fractional marketing, a strategist, I tell people that like that's one of the ways. If you have a big piece of information, whether it's white paper that you build or huge website content, let's divvy and break that out. So yeah, the book is no different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we use this all the time in our email campaigns. We'll pull a segment from the book and we'll make it into an email campaign. And we'll say, if you want more, you can get a free copy of the book. And that either gets new leads, or for those that are already on our email list, it allows us to see who keeps downloading multiple things. And then
Yeah.
we can target them, as you know, we can target them a little bit more intimately because they're very, very engaged with what we're putting out there. All
Right.
right. So let's go back though. We got a little bit ahead of where you're going here.
Yeah.
You launched this book. Now, launching a book is probably one of the most emotional parts of the whole process. Okay?
Yeah.
What were you feeling in the weeks, the days leading up to the launch? And then how did you feel on launch day?
Oh gosh. And I emailed him. I'm going to tell the story and I don't care if I ugly cry. I'm going to do the thing. I'm being honest because people love when people laugh. We should be fine with people crying. And I'm not telling you I'm going to, but a little forewarning. I leading up to was really excited and really busy. Honestly, those days leading up to was just busy work, like getting social media posts together, doing some videos, all the things, getting a cold email campaign, not actually cold. It was actually my contact list, but getting my email campaign together and getting out the word. But the day of the launch, I honestly in the morning, I was trying not to focus. I'm like, just get your work done. Got plenty of work to do. Just focus on that. And then of course I'd be like, beep, and look over to see what the sales are like. And they were slow starts, kind of like a bell curve. And I was like, oh gosh, what happens if no one buys this thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, come on. And so then it really started. The bell curve shot up. And then probably by lunchtime in the afternoon, it was really cruising up. And I had this moment, Jake, where my father passed away 20 years ago, unexpectedly, but still 20 years ago now. I was sitting there and I was like, I don't know, I was making tea. That's exactly because I'm trying to be healthy and do my green tea every morning. I'm making my green tea. And I literally had this thought come into my brain, just a genuine, I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to call my dad. Like I couldn't wait to call and tell him. And then I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't call him and tell him. But it was so weird that I had that moment. And what was really cool is that I was telling my cousin about it. She goes, that's just your dad letting you know he's there. And I was like, then the waterworks hit. So I had all the emotions. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, I'm so sad. I can't share this with my dad with, oh, he is here. I am sharing it with him. Oh, Jake, I was a little bit of a hot mess, probably.
Yeah.
But
It's such a beautiful story.
thank you.
Like, because and also what when you talk about the sales early on and you're like, are they coming?
Yeah.
What's so funny is we have no control over when Amazon necessarily updates or doesn't update their rankings or their sales. And so we're like over here, nobody's bought my book. What the heck's happening? It's not even here. And meanwhile, all it has to do is just update, but we're over here because we're feeling the emotions. We're making our green tea. We're having all these things. We've never gone through it before. We're like, oh my gosh, is it happening? Is it not happening? What if no one buys it? I'm screwed. And
Yes.
then all of a sudden it just shoots up and you start to feel everything. Did you find in your experience that you had a larger support system, or you had people that you didn't know were actually like following you or that they would support you come out and support you for this book launch?
Oh, 100%. Just the other day, and like you said, I'm early in the launch process. I've never met the man in my life, but when you on LinkedIn, you get tagged when people tag you, and it said this man had tagged me, and I was like, oh, I wonder what about. So I clicked, and it was him sharing the number one, like the top list of business development books, and tagging each author, which was really nice of him to do. And that was one that I had hit number one. And now his screen grab, I had moved to two, but whatever. But I was like, wow, like people are sharing this for me that I've never met. And it was just like hey, here are the latest good reads in business development. And he's a senior vice president of business development at I think like Bank of America, or like one of the big banks. And I was like, thanks. So I made sure I reached out and said thank you to him, but that was unexpected.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And so as you look ahead here, I want to spend the last little bit here really digging into all about the book. Okay. People and data drive results. Okay. Now, people are one of my favorite things in the world.
Same.
Data is one of my favorite things in the world, and the numbers. So can you talk about how data plays a role when it comes to building a brand voice, when it comes to storytelling, and when it comes to really being able to drive those results?
Yeah, I mean, a great example is just profit margins. So that's a data point. Hey, where are profit margins and where are they coming from? Okay, well, bang, that's a data point. And now all of a sudden you're starting to look down that path. Okay, this product or service is what's really bringing in the majority of our income. Let's look at the ones that aren't. What are other products and services that are lacking or maybe lagging behind? And then start looking at who's buying those products and services. So now you know what product or service is connecting, who it's connecting to, which then allows you to know what path and what channels to use to
Mm,
grow those storylines. And like in the financial institution world, we spoke to someone, I have this in the book. I spoke to a loan officer who said they had someone come and get $1,000 loan. And people were like, $1,000 loan? I mean, this is a $700 million in asset size, financial institution. So $1,000 is easily a data point on a spreadsheet somewhere that will never be seen and get lost. But because of the qualitative data that went with it, and this loan officer bringing that data point to life said, we just had this customer come in, a member, because it was a credit union, and they call them members in the credit union world. We had a member come in, and they needed to get a wheelchair ramp for a family member to get in the house. But they didn't have enough cash, and a credit card, the compound interest would kill them, but a loan was much more feasible. And so we gave them a $1,000 loan so they could build this wheelchair ramp for their parent. Those are the moments where you really get to understand the stories that surround those data points. And they're so important, because to go all the way back to what I said at the beginning, people do business with people. The
mm.
trend lines and all of those numbers, they're going to move and they're going to do the thing they're going to do, not on their own. They're doing it because people connected with one another and drove those actions.
Mm. I really like how you just connected that like singular data point to the story.
Yeah.
And I think that like it got my wheels going a little bit, because I think about like where we acquire customers, what those customers end up writing about, what level do they end up getting to, how long does it take them through the time frame. And it got me thinking like that's a great area that we can, as at Big Idea Bestseller, we can talk even more about,
Yeah.
is like when we have moms come in, and we have coaches come in, we have real estate people come in, finding out a little bit more about the story, and then comparing the data can help us to see where people are being more or less successful. We can see who's having the most success,
Yes.
what are they using it for. So like they just got me thinking, and like I have so many content ideas from that one statement of the story of the $1,000, which is a data point that on the spreadsheet would never actually be seen.
Exactly.
And it just, that's the ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
You see the data point, you learn the story behind it, that story gets extrapolated on, it gets reshared, and that goes on and on and on, and it continues to build that awareness around it. So damn, that was good, Becky. Okay.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I'll have to tag you in one of the posts when I get around to
There
doing
you
it
go.
now. Okay, I want to go here though, because when we talk about the data and we talk about the people here, there has to be though a North Star. There has to be laser focused intention when you're using your brand voice to drive your marketing strategy. So without giving people too much that's in the book, can you walk us through kind of what would be your order of priority actions, if I may, of
Mhm.
how people could get started on building the brand voice, incorporating people, data, etc., ultimately going through your process. What are some of the action steps in order that you would encourage people to go through?
I think that diversity of thought really leads to open innovation. It is so important to move the needle. So I think the first thing that you need to do is just look internally at the team you have. And I get that this might be different. This is a very scalable process. It might be a party of one, which you really want to try and avoid. That's kind of the idea that your story, your business story is not one person sitting at a desk by themselves figuring it out. Now, if you're a solopreneur, maybe it is going to be that, or you can talk to a customer and get some feedback from them for some data points. But let's say you have a team, at least of 10, you want to get someone who maybe is brand new to the company, someone who's been around for a little while. You want someone maybe younger, older, different ethnicities, genders, you kind of just want to, you don't want to make it too big, say 4 or 5 people, kind of bring them in from different aspects and ask everyone to bring in a data sheet. Might be a data point, like the $1,000 data point. That loan officer would have come into the meeting and said, here's my data point and here's the story. You have each person bring that in, and because of the diversity of people you have at the table, you're going to get a bunch of different stories. So that gets you moving right away.
Yeah.
As a chief marketing officer, one of my favorite people always and forever will be the chief financial officers. I usually go to find them right away and ask the questions like, where are the biggest profit margins? Or, whoever does it keeps the books. And if they're not that big, they may not have a CFO. But you want to get a meeting together with the people, tell the people to bring the data and dump it all out there, and then start looking at what those data points are. That'll start narrowing it down. It's kind of like a brain dump at the beginning, and then you kind of distill it to this essence by the very end. And by the end, you'll have it narrowed down. And I know this sounds so silly to take all of this information and narrow it down, but you really do want to narrow it down to just a list of a few words, maybe 3, maybe 7. I wouldn't go too much more than that. But, Coca-Cola is a great example. After they did all the work and they narrowed it down, however long ago they've been in business and over the last 100 years, and they would be like friendly, optimistic, and inclusive. Well, you never hear anyone say with a Coke bottle in hand, I'm friendly, optimistic, and inclusive. Have a drink, but they do say things like, I'd like to buy the world a Coke, or I have a Coke and a smile. And so all of those campaigns over the years have been tied together by that very genuine brand voice, because they took the time to look at the data and build a real strong foundation to then launch all of those storylines.
That's really fascinating. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You didn't know I was going to do this, and I'm going to open ourselves up for some live action brand
Okay.
voicing. Okay, so you had the chance to work with our team in Big
Mhm.
Idea to Bestseller, and you had an incredible experience with everything. You're familiar with our process and what we do. I'd be curious to hear your opinion of what you think our brand voice represents and kind of what narrative you perceive us having now that you've become a data point and a person that we love within our ecosystem.
I can already tell you a brand voice by 4 words: smart, approachable, energetic, fun. I would use those. Smart. I knew that when I came to you guys, I could say, I don't know how this works. Like, what is this part of the process? And I'm on it. I got it. Calm and energetic almost seem like oxymorons, but in the same breath, to me, they're the same. I could go to you or to Mikey, one of the other folks on the team that worked with me, or Adrian. Everybody was so approachable. Everyone was always available. There was never like, deuces, Freemal, we got other things going on. I don't have time for your emails. I never felt that way. And then the responses were always so energetic, like we're excited for you, but also calm. And the reason I'm going to go off just for a second, so stick with me. But we adopted our second son in China. And right before I went, I spoke to a psychologist or child therapist. And I said, what happens if I go and he doesn't want to come with us? What happens if I'm in that room on Gotcha Day with all these people from the adoption agency, the government, and he won't come with me? I can't wrestle the kid to the ground and say, you've got to come. Like, what do I do? And I was really nervous about Gotcha Day. And he gave the best advice. And he said, when there's chaos in the room, especially if the child's crying, if they're fighting, he said, just remain calm, because a child is going to look around. And if the adult in the room is also losing their mind, the child's going to get more nervous and say, oh my gosh, who's in charge here? Like, no one's in charge. And then they're going to even get more fired up. I say all that to bring it full circle to, in a much different way, but in the same way, that's how I felt about the team at Big Idea to Bestseller. Anytime I spoke to a team member, I knew that I was going to get an answer. Everybody was calm, like, we got this. Don't worry about it. And in the same time, energetic and super excited for me. So
That's amazing. I'm going to take this one step further here because I think people seeing how you do this in action is going to inspire them to want to work with you and to want to learn more, and kind of they see the importance of this. Here's something that I see a lot, and a lot of the people that are listening to this are corporate executives, entrepreneurs running their own businesses, founders, and different people that fit right into the bucket of people that you can really support and help. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that I notice a lot in business, okay, especially for people that have been around for a little bit or who work in a more traditional industry, there's the idea that you have to be very traditional, very professional, and there's a connotation that comes with that. Mm-hmm. But when you kind of gave our brand voice of how you experienced it, it felt very modern, very upbeat, very smart, calm, energetic, approachable, right? These are very friendly type of things that you describe us. We're in a very traditional industry, the book industry, the publishing industry, right? Like, that's been around for a long time, and there's a traditional way of doing things. It's an older type of industry that we're a part of. So for anybody that feels that they're a part of an older industry or a mature industry, I think you've used that term earlier today, but they want to be able to share the stories that resonate with the brand voice that you just experienced.
Yeah.
How do you navigate the two and dance between, well, we're going to be professional, but we're also going to make sure that, we're not stuffy. We're going to have fun. We're willing to do some things that maybe weren't acceptable in a lot of ways 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, or whatever it may be.
Well, I think, and not to get into all the lingo, but I think mature industries especially need to be willing to jump the S curve. And when you talk about the S curve, you're talking about when you're, at the bottom and you're growing, or you're new, and then you're kind of growing, and then the curve starts to go down because you're maturing, and you're going to go down if you don't jump that S curve and start a new process. And so, I feel like Big Idea to Bestseller basically jumped the S curve is how I would state it. And that is how, think of Netflix. Not Netflix, but like Blockbuster. Blockbuster did not jump the S curve. They were a video rental release, whatever business. And as videos started to go back down and it was a mature industry, had they jumped the S curve and started looking into the digital space, which I get at that time, we didn't have the knowledge we have now. But that's what makes the difference, is when you find someone who's willing to say, we're not going to do it the way we've always done it. And really, to me, and I think a lot of customers, is professionalism is simply doing what you said you were going to do. And you did it. And that, bam, that's it. Honestly, if you did what you said you were going to do and you were stuffy and old school, I don't know that we would be here talking. I'd have been like, thank you, but I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so. No, all great points. So look, this has been great. How do we get the book Brand Voice? How do we work with you? How do we continue to learn for you? Where do we go?
All the places. Okay, so to get the book, it's Amazon, of course, and I'm not exactly a regular seller on Amazon. So if you just search Becky Freemal, I'm going to pop up, and this book is the only thing I'm selling right now. So it'll be pretty easy. Brand Voice should get you right there too, but Becky Freemal will definitely get you there. So that's the book. Other than that, I have a website, themarketexec.com, that I have utilized for my fractional chief, my fractional executive work and marketing strategy. And then I actually just started a website, beckyfreemal.com. And I will tell you, it's kind of an evolution for me and my own brand. I realize as time goes on, yes, my company is themarketexec.com, but people know me. Like, this whole time we've been talking, it's been Becky Freemal. It's not the Market Exec stuffy and whatever, to your point. So I'm starting to gravitate toward the beckyfreemal.com, but both websites point to each other.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Speak or strategy, all the things.
I love it. I love it. And we'll get all that linked up. No problem. It'll be down below in the show notes, or wherever the show notes are on the device someone's listening to this at. But I want to say thank you, because it's been awesome to watch you through this process. I remember the first conversation to here you are now, seeing the book cover come to life, seeing the progress, talking about it on your show, and just seeing everything kind of come to this moment. And so I just want to congratulate you. I want to say thank you for trusting us, being part of it, and also for sharing all your great wisdom with us today. Like, it's clear you know your stuff. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Thanks to you and the team. I appreciate it. It's been awesome. And it's going to keep being awesome.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Becky Freemal in the house. Make sure to go grab a copy of her book, Brand Voice, People Plus Data Drive Results. And here's my challenge to you. After listening to this, it has never been more apparent how storytelling plays a role in why it's such an important role in your overall strategy. Why having a brand voice is so critical. Why using both people and data to drive results, just like her book says. So my challenge to you is to think of 3 to 5 words that describe your brand today. Just like we did that action exercise. Yeah. I want you to all do that with your own brands, whether that be a personal brand, whether it be your corporate brand, whether it be your side hustle brand, whatever it is. What are 3 to 5 words that describe your brand voice? And then ask yourself, are those 3 to 5 words the words I want people to be saying? Or are they not? And if they are the same, great job, keep going. If they're not, then maybe we need to think about how can we figure out the best steps. And that's where you call Becky. Either of those options, call Becky, take you to the next level. So that's what I got for you guys today. I appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Big Idea to Bestseller podcast. Talk to you soon.